Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another social emotional workshop. Today, our topic is family addictions. We're going to talk about all of the things that affect, you know, people as individual when family addictions are taking place. We welcome back Teresa and Joe from Care of Southeastern Michigan. Welcome back, you guys. We're so glad to have you.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started.
Good deal.
So, this particular PowerPoint I use on a monthly basis um, for a partnering agency that I go to, Sacred Heart Rehabilitation Center in Richmond has a separate building for women who have their children with them as they're going through treatment. And so I go and do parenting, and I talk about our services and I talk about FASD a little bit, but mostly they want to know about how do you talk to your kids about family addiction. And so I try to change this up a little bit too. As we're going through, I included the roles that the children take on. And so I also try to do this. Actually, Joe and I both do it for high schools in our area too, because so many families are impacted by addiction, and you don't always know. Outsiders don't always know, and even the families themselves don't always know. So it's always good information to have. So, we always start off by talking about, families are people makers. You are who you are because of the environment that you grow up in. And so, if spirituality is big in your house, then yeah, you will become probably most likely a spiritual person as an adult. And same thing with sports or any other thing that becomes important in the family also becomes something that will affect the child as they're growing up. And one of the things that we always try to touch on too is that the last time I saw the statistic, it was 85% of all families has some kind of dysfunction in it. And so a lot of times, people have coping skills to deal with it. Um, and so because dysfunctional families are functioning in pain when there's stressors involved, a lot of kids will take on roles. And that's why I included this for the high school kids, because I want them to understand that what they're going through is normal. So, we have also have the care camp that we provide every summer for kids preschool to high school who have a loved one with addiction in their family. And so, we don't show them this slide, but we talk about family roles. We used to even put on, a play about it so that the kids can really understand that what they're going through is normal. It's not a good or a bad thing, we tell them. It's just something that families, or not families, but children do. Well, I should say families, because in this particular family sculpt, that's what we call this interact part of this interactive training, excuse me, is the stressor that we use is addiction. And so we do include the person with the addiction and their enabler. So it is a family thing. Addiction's a family disease. And so the people that are taking on these roles are doing so that they can survive what's going on. And so it doesn't become a bad thing or a good thing. It just is what it is to for that person to survive what's going on with them. And so, what are family stressors? It could be something big like domestic violence or abandonment. It can be something, you know, um, a little bit smaller, like a new baby in the family, um, or going to a new school. It could include homelessness or one parent or one family member being incarcerated. one parent leaving and starting a new family with somebody else, just even moving into a new home. So we've all had family stressors, and some of us have been very fortunate and only had the little ones, the smaller ones that we could deal with and move on, you know. Um, but some of these are pretty big, and that's when the family sculpt or the family baggage will come in for kids. So, while I'm talking to them and while I'm talking to adults too, I like to let them know that, stressors can feel like a lot of different things. It can be like very oppressive in your house, especially if it's domestic violence. It can feel manipulative and violent and loud and scary, or it can just feel normal. Whatever stressors in your house starts to feel normal for you after a while. And you're surprised when you find out that other people don't have that in their lives. So, besides those things, a family stressor could be just a lot of stress related illnesses like stomach aches and back aches and headaches, things like that. So, I try to stress to families that whatever it feels like to them is not good or bad. That's never what these things are about. These things are about just letting people know uh, what they may be going through and that it's normal for that period in their life. But then, we also are going to be offering them some resources too. Like, how do you take care of this so that it doesn't become a big part of your life? So, like I said, for this purpose, we are going to use this family stressor of addiction because we want to talk to our kids about it. And so the addict could be anyone in the family, obviously. But with this one, we're going with the parent. One of the parents is the person who has the addiction. And so, I don't know if any of you guys have had to live in it, but all these things that are listed here under what a person with an addiction might say are really familiar to me. I remember hearing every single one of these from my brother who had a heroin addiction. It's not my fault. I don't feel, I could see a lack of empathy in him for everything that was going on with my parents and the rest of my family. And I don't think it's because he was a callous person. It's not the way he was brought up, but it affected his judgment. The drugs did. And I don't think that any amount of tears, well, I know because he had an addiction for 30 some years before he passed from his addiction. No amount of tears or harsh reprimands from my parents ever changed anything because of that pull of addiction. I need to relieve stress. That's what my brother said in one of his lucid moments. You know, I asked him, why don't you? He was never one for group support or, he'd go to treatment and then get out and go back to his drug of choice again. Sometimes the time varied, but I know relapse is part of recovery, but he never really stayed in recovery. But anyway, sorry, I'm digressing, but he said to me in one of his more lucid moments, I just needed to relieve stress, because I don't know what his reasoning was for stress, but he said, I just do it for that reason alone. And I can handle things a lot better with a few joints, which always led to a few this, a few that, and then hey, I'm back into heroin again. I could stop anytime I want to. Yeah, I heard that a lot too. So those are some of the things that a person with an addiction might say. And I really liked this picture when I saw it because I thought it represented addiction so well. So this man who's in the water, you know, yeah, the water's close to his mouth, but he's still treading. And there's somebody reaching out for him. So he thinks he's okay, but pretty soon that woman is not going to be holding out her hand anymore for him. And, then he's going to start to feel the water come over his face and affect him. But, as long as that enabler is there, that enabler is going to give that person the feeling that they can keep doing what they're doing without any consequences. And that's, basically what an enabler does. They're doing things that the person with the addiction should be doing themselves. And so what's going on in their head is my life revolves around this addicted person and their behavior. I have to make sure nobody sees how bad it is. I don't know that they think that thought in their head, but that's sure the feeling they have in their gut every day. They try to keep that addict's life together, cleaning up for them, calling in for work, giving my parents, giving my brother a place to live when he was, 40 years old because he couldn't keep a job. Um, Trying to constantly help him find a job, that type of thing. Making excuses for his behavior, you know, and my parents were very unhappy. It ruined their marriage because they both were enabling him, but in different ways. And so they couldn't live their dream or their wish of a happy family life because my brother's addiction started probably, I would say, when he was in adolescence, like around 11, 12. I knew he was smoking pot because he tried to hide it in my room because I was that quiet kid that nobody saw or paid attention to. So if he put his stash in my room, nobody was going to find it, and if they did, I wouldn't get in as much trouble. So like I said, he wasn't a hurtful, hateful person. I know he loved me, but he was trying to survive that addiction the best way he could. And so they're often inconsistent and neglectful parents to their other children. I don't want to even digress into that. And on the inside, they feel very out of control themselves. So, this for enablers, it's very hard for them, even though they feel like they're helping. This is a constant job 24/7 for them, and it's very difficult. But to them, it feels like, I'm holding this boat from sinking as long as I can do this stuff for my family. So now we're going to talk about the kids and the roles that they take on. So the hero child is usually the firstborn, but they don't have to be. Um, and some of these roles can be interchanged with other ones. So, for instance, my oldest sister Sherry was the hero child um, of the family. She still is. But when she left home, when she was 18, I became the hero child, but it didn't work for me because I couldn't maintain that. So I just let it go after a while. But I tried really hard to be the hero child because that child represents self worth to the family, a source of pride. So, there's nothing wrong with our family. If there was, we wouldn't have this child, in our family who's a high achiever and who's, very attractive child, looks good in everything they do. They're very successful, um, you know, good grades, volunteer work, the president of this, the captain of that, they're into everything. And because they're trying to make up for that parental nurturing and approval that they want so bad, but might not be getting because of the person with the addiction. So, inside this source of pride for the family is thinking, I'm going to take care of everyone and everything. I'm going to hold this boat together no matter what. And that way, everybody will be happy. And I'm not going to upset the family or anybody else by, failing or having any kind of issues that I'm going to talk about. So they don't want to share their feelings about anything. And so the enabler, because it's the oldest child, that enabler might dump responsibility on these little tiny shoulders that they shouldn't be. And even for a grown person, some of those family responsibilities can be really difficult sometimes. Uh, but for a child, it can be even a heavier burden to bear, and so they get angry, just like anybody would. And they're not going to show you their anger, though, right? Because I'm going to take care of everybody and please everybody, and so I'm going to wear myself thin being a people pleaser so that nobody knows how upset I am. But you know as well as I do, you can't keep anger down. It's going to leak out some way. So sometimes it does, in passive aggressive behavior.
And Teresa,
Yes.
I think the hero also is wants to be perfect and that responsible. So if I'm good, maybe mom or dad will stop drinking. If I'm
Oh yeah.
perfect, they'll stop.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because we've said this so many times, so I don't remember if we've said it here, but kids take on the responsibility for all the problems. Even teenagers, anytime there's a stressor in the family, because of their brain development and because they're so egocentric, they think that if I was prettier, if I was stronger, if I did better in school, if I didn't get in trouble last week, mom and dad wouldn't be getting divorced, or mom and or dad wouldn't be drinking or using drugs. So, I remember even when I went through my divorce, my son was 17 and he even said, did I do something to cause this? 17. You're looking at him, you're thinking he's an adult, but he's still got a kid brain. He's still thinking, somehow this is my fault. So in the care camp, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that's what we're trying to teach them is, you're not responsible for this. You didn't cause it and you can't cure it. But these kids, these hero children, like Joe's saying, that's one of the things that they want to do. Maybe if I do this and I help, maybe my parent will stop using and we can be like everybody else again. And then there's the scapegoat. So what they represent to the family is it takes the attention off the person with the addiction. So if there's something wrong with our family, it's this guy here and not the addict, because at least this guy here, we can fix him. If he's the scapegoat, if he's getting in trouble, we could do something about that. I'll just be more strict as a parent, or, we'll send him to boot camp, or, we'll take him to counseling. But, that's a little harder to do when the problem is addiction. There's no promises or guarantees with that. So this kid is rightfully called the scapegoat. And on the inside, they don't need anybody. They create their own family of choice outside of their family because they're just so sick and dang tired of them. They don't want to be hurt anymore by those people in their family. So, like I said, they create their family of choice outside of their birth family. They're very angry and hostile and defiant, but unlike the hero child, they're not afraid to show it. They seem like they don't care about anybody in the family, um, and they won't take responsibility for anything there. Meaning, I'm outside of the family, so I'm not going to participate in chores or in holidays or family gatherings. Nothing. I don't want to be part of this. And so they're labeled or known as the bad kid their whole life. And then there's the lost child. Typically, it is the baby of the family. And in my family, that this is where I was. I represented, I guess, relief. That's what the lost child does represent. One less child to worry about. For me, I just wanted to get away from the yelling and the crying and the arguing in my family. Um, my sister, Tony, also got pregnant when she was 16. And so that compounded the amount of yelling and screaming because, that was 1970 when that happened. And it wasn't a thing, especially in 1970 with a Italian Catholic family. It's not a thing that you do. And so there was a lot of yelling, and I escaped by being the lost child. I don't count. I won't be seen or heard until they won't yell at me. If I'm sick, my family might rally around me and protect me because otherwise they're not protecting me from all this. So they become a loner. They're private and withdrawn. They can take care of themselves. They keep secrets really well, and they treasure pets and possessions. So here I am alone in my bedroom with every stray animal I could find on the street found its way into my room, birds, dogs, cats. Um, also, I had tons of books on the floor, on a bookshelf, everywhere on my bed. I do that now still, but when I had a room as big as a closet, it looked terrible. But I found a lot of comfort being alone there in my room, away from everything else. I could pretend, that I was really supposed to be born into the Brady Bunch, because that's another thing. They live a high fantasy life, you know, because that's their way of escaping what they're hearing and seeing go on in their family. And then again, there's also the mascot. And so that represents comic relief, a sense of fun and humor in the family. And so my sister Tony, that I mentioned, she was not only the scapegoat and hung around with the guy that nobody liked, and eventually he got her pregnant, but also she was the mascot. She still is. She's very funny and very witty. And so I feel like she took on two roles um, for our family at that time. And so they represent the comic relief for the family. I laugh instead of cry. If people laugh at me, that means they like me. So they're the clown. They come off as immature, when they're young. They are bouncing off the walls all the time looking for attention. So a lot of time they're misdiagnosed as hyperactive. Um, and they're seldom taken seriously because they do come off as kind of immature. So you can see how this would help a family going through crisis, and I have some good examples of what this looks like too. So any thoughts or questions about these four roles? Anything come up for any of you guys while you're looking at this or hearing about this? So all of these children, even though they've taken on different roles, they all have the same inner feelings. They feel lonely, like they're the only people, especially teenagers, they're the only people going through this. Nobody else is going through what my family's going through. They often feel inadequate, and that brings up guilt. If I had done more, if I had done this or that, my family wouldn't be having these problems. They feel guilty and confused and afraid. And so, what happens when people get afraid, right? More likely than not, they're going to be really angry, because anger is more acceptable, more comfortable than feeling fearful, insecure, hurt, and rejected. Those are harder to deal with. And so I'm just going to be angry at everybody. And plus, it gives them a sense of power too. I can yell at you, I can hit you, I can scream at you, and I feel more powerful. I don't feel so lost and alone. And that's what I try to explain to these ladies at Clearview. Because when I ask them, what do you guys want to talk about today? Well, I want to tell my kid why I'm in treatment, why I had to leave, why I lost custody. So what's going on with you guys? Well, they never want to talk to me. And when they do talk to me, they scream at me, or they just, I go and see them and they sit on the couch and they won't look at me. And that's why I tell them, well, that's the anger. They don't know how to control you or these horrible feelings they have about you and what you did. And so they're using anger to overcome that and feel better. And so your job is to try and not take that so personally, which is hard for these ladies, because if you're going through addiction, you already feel shame and guilt all the time. And so, not taking that personally when their kid says, I hate you. Why don't you go? Why don't you leave? I want to be with dad, or I want to be with mom. It's really hard for them to not take personally. But I tell them it's not really you that they hate. That it's really what's going on. It's that feeling of being out of control and confused and afraid that they'll never see you again. So, who do you think needs help in this family, you guys? You got those 4 kids taking on roles. You got the parents or family members with the addiction or the enabling. Who do you think needs help?
All of them.
All of them, everyone.
Yes. Yeah, they all do. Even that hero child needs help. Who do you think has a bigger chance of becoming addicted in their life in that family that I described?
Maybe the mascot, because I think all of them, it could happen, but that mascot is covering their pain with laughter and, may find the need to self-medicate.
Yes.
Everyone probably overlooks that person because they're always smiling and laughing, and therefore nobody really tends to their inner needs.
Yes. They don't know how to make those attachments too because they're alone a lot of times. And so, yeah, they could self medicate to feel better. And when we do the family sculpt in the high school, excuse me, when we do it face to face, we do it like an interactive activity where we have people take on the roles. And then I'm like a reporter, or Joe, but we both do it in the high school. We act like the reporter and we ask them a series of questions. And one of the things that we ask the mascot is if they ever heard of marijuana, because exactly what you're saying, whoever said that, they are using marijuana as a way to cope with the pain of being neglected and, not being paid attention to. And just, anybody in that family could use it, especially the scapegoat too. Those kids are often using substances early as well. I think you even said that anybody really in that family. And the reason why we call it a family sculpt is because we sculpt the person with the addiction and the enabler. So, we give the person with the addiction, we give them a fake like beer can. And then we put the enabler right in front of them and ask the person with the addiction to put their hand on their shoulder and kind of lean on them a little bit. And then the rest of the kids, when we describe what they're feeling, what I just went through with you, what they're doing, we ask them, like, where would you stand in relation to these two people? And then we ask them the questions that we ask them, like, what do you think of your parents? What do you think of dad's drinking? Do you ever bring your friends home? Blah, blah, blah. All those questions. And one of the questions that we ask them too afterwards is, what if someone leaves the family? What if the enabler walks away? What do you think would happen to the addict? And what we're trying to get through to is, these 3 questions. Well, the person with the addiction might fall on their face and decide, I need to get some help. Or they might find somebody to replace the enabler, like the hero child, or another person who's willing to enable them, pick up where the other one left off. Or that person won't get any help at all. But we stress to these kids, that's nobody's fault. It's not the enabler's fault. It's not the family's fault. This person's addiction just overtook them and their ability to recover. So one of those 3 things will happen if someone leaves the family, the enabler. But that could be true for it could be true for the scapegoat. What if the scapegoat leaves the family and goes to juvenile justice center and then turns 18 and goes into prison because they can't stay out of trouble? And then the person with the addiction, doesn't survive their addiction. That's not their fault either. So what do you guys think the strengths of this family are? Is there a strength in this family?
Each other.
Yeah, I could see that.
just, having someone, because there are people out there that don't have anyone. And yes, they're dysfunctional, and yes, they have issues, but at least they have someone.
Yeah. Misery loves company. At least you have somebody to commiserate with, somebody who knows what's going on in your family. Because a lot of kids think this is the only family this is happening to. A lot of times when we have that care camp, parents won't tell their kids what it's all about. They just think they're going to another summer camp. So, we typically have like circle time. And on the first day, I mean, I haven't taught a child's class probably, or a child's group probably in about 15 years, but Joe has. And do they still do circle time, Joe, where they talk about, do you know why you're here? Do you know what this is all about? Do they still do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We even have sunshine and clouds, where we open up what's a good thing that happened to you today. What's your cloud? What's a negative, bad thing that happened to you today? Just to get them to talk about their feelings.
Yeah. But once they do know why they're there, I don't know, Joe, like I said, it's been about 15 years, but I remember sometimes seeing these kids just like deflate a little bit, like, oh, okay, there are other people this happens to. My family's not the only one going through this. I don't know if they still do that, but I remember catching that a few times. And then once they start to feel safe, when we do, sunshine and clouds, or we do feeling safari, which is a way to get them to talk about their feelings, negative and positive, they're more likely to do that. And that's one of the things that's going to help, is talking about it. And so, yeah, having other family members that are going through that, that's going to help them a lot, to not feel so alone in the world. That was a good point. So, one of the things that we teach them in care camp is the 7 C's. As I mentioned before, you didn't cause it, and you can't control it, and you can't cure it. So you've seen this many times where kids go home. It happens after they leave camp, because we talk about all substances. We talk about alcohol and marijuana and cigarettes. So a lot of times kids will go home and throw their parents' cigarettes away. They're trying to control it and cure it for them. So we tell them, this is it's the adult responsibility to take care of it, or it's the person with the addiction's responsibility to take care of it. But there are things that you can do. You can take care of yourself, by talking about your feelings. That's really important. That's why we do sunshine and clouds. That's why we do feeling safari. You can talk about how you feel, and you can learn how to make healthy choices. That's another thing that we do. Not just about the fact that you have, your family has a history of addiction, but what do you do when you're in uncomfortable situations and you don't know how to handle it? And I kind of have a funny, not funny, I shouldn't say that. It's not really a funny story, just kind of funny in an ironic way. My sister's granddaughter, is a year younger than my daughter. And she lived with us for a time. Her name's Alex, because my sister's daughter, my niece, has an alcohol addiction, and things were crazy at her house for a while. And so Alex, my great niece, went to care camp for a couple of years. And one time when she was still very young, she would not get in the car with her grandmother, not my sister, but her other grandmother, who did not have an addiction, but she drank a beer and then was going to take Alex out. And Alex said, I'm not getting in the car with you. And she was very adamant about it. I'm not getting in the car. No. And finally, she said, Care Camp told us you never get in a car with somebody who's been drinking. And they tried to, placate her. Oh, Alex, it was just one beer and it was a couple of hours ago. And I'm not drunk, blah, blah, blah. We had it with dinner, but Alex was adamant. And yeah, she was finding a way to make a healthy choice and take care of herself, you know. And so I talked to my sister about not disciplining her, and my sister was in agreement because she grew up in an addicted household too. She knew how important it was for Alex to learn how to be assertive in situations like that. And then, last of all, the last C is to celebrate themselves, which is really important again because those kids, they tend to think that it's all their fault. And so if they can find ways to take care of themselves by celebrating themselves and doing things that make them happy, that's part of dealing with addiction in your family and not letting it overtake the rest of your life. They need a break from what's going on. And so, one way to do that is to find activities, find ways to take care of themselves and celebrate themselves. So, you know, what I launch off into next with these moms is what we've talked about with you guys, that their brain is still developing for the next 25 years. So when you go to talk to them, you have to remember that the executive part of their brain that deals in good decision making and empathy and regulating emotions is not totally where it should be in order to be empathic towards you and your situation, or to not blurt out things that might be hurtful because they don't know how to regulate the fear and the anger that's swirling around inside them. And so they don't always make the best decisions in the things that they say and do. So you have to take that into consideration when you're talking to a child about your history, the family's history of addiction, and the things that you have done or the things that are going on. you know so you have to be careful in the way that you communicate, because even with people who are not going through stressors, and who could that possibly be, but there are people that aren't going through stressors, and when you talk to them, 90% of your communication is what you sound and you look like. So you can be as nice as can be, and you might be like me and have a natural RBF going on all the time, or you might be talking really intensely and sound like you're angry when you're not. So I tell these ladies that you have to just be aware of not only what you say but what you sound like. Make sure your voice doesn't sound really harsh and intense and loud. That can be so easy to slip into that when there's high emotions going on. And I also mentioned to them, make sure your voice doesn't sound really high and breathy and insecure, because that doesn't help either. That just makes them notice that, and it becomes a distraction from what you want to say. um and so you have to pay attention to what you look like too. And that's not always easy to do. Like I said, people are constantly accusing me of looking angry, and it's just because, I'm getting older, or I'm thinking, and, can't always look youthful and young. So sometimes I look very intense, but that doesn't mean I'm mad. But when you're a kid, they're so good at reading body language. So they're always looking. There's mom and dad mad at me. Oh, that means they're angry when they do that with their eyes or when they clench their jaw. So they're always reading your face. And so we just have to be aware of what our faces might look like. And so eventually we get to, what exactly do you tell them? So with toddlers, I tell them, keep it short and sweet. You don't have to answer every question. And with any age group, you do not have to reveal every single detail of why you are in treatment or what led you to get arrested. You don't have to say that. And especially with toddlers, you just want to say, I have a sickness and I'm trying to get better, or I did something wrong. And so, I had to go to jail. Well, what did toddlers aren't going to say, what did you do? School age might say that. But a toddler really just needs to hear that you're trying to get better, and then immediately engage them when you're done in something fun. because that's how people self-soothe. When they hear something that's distressing, when they're upset, they have to find activities that can make them feel better, and it helps them to calm down. Or, you know, uh, just to get their mind off of it so they're not thinking about it, too much. And so that they can see your face happy. Toddlers, again, are looking at your face. And so, don't engage a lot, but engage in doing fun things, but don't keep information from them. It's one of those things that you have to talk early and talk often about. So when they get into school age, like 5 to 12, they can have more information. But again, I always have to stress to these moms, because I've heard from them that they reveal too much sometimes, and I say, they don't need to hear that. You know, my son saw my brother getting arrested when he was really young, and I just said he did something wrong. Well, what did he do? It doesn't matter. He has to go to jail, and he has to, make amends for that. And then when he comes out, he's going to try again to do his best, because he has a drug addiction, which is a disease. I explained that to them many times, that it was a disease like anything else, and he has to take care of himself. Sometimes it's really, really, really hard. And when it is, he struggles. So I tell them, be as honest as you can, but you don't have to tell them everything. And then when they get teens, they can handle the most information. They still don't need to know the details, though. And they're going to have lots of questions. And so, handle it the best way you can, be as honest as you can. But mostly, they need to talk about how they feel and what they think. Because, like I said, they think that they're the only family that's going through this. And what are other people going to think, about my family?
Teresa,
Yes.
I remember when you told that to Luke. Luke says, "Am I going to get the disease?"
Yeah. Yeah, he was school aged, and he he said, I hate Uncle Johnny. And so I reflected that back. I just said, so you sound really angry at Uncle Johnny right now, because I wanted him to talk to me. And if I would have said, shame on you, or you don't talk about people that way, or you shouldn't say that about your family, or hate is such a strong word, we don't use that word, I wouldn't have heard from Luke again, because he was trusting me with that information. And so I had to become safe to continue to earn that trust. And so I said, well, it sounds like you're, really angry at Uncle Johnny. And he said he made Nunny and Poppy cry. And I said, so you're not really angry. It sounds like you feel hurt and sad because Nunny and Poppy were crying. And he said, yeah, you know. And then I said, he didn't want to talk much more after that. I think he just wanted to sit with it. So I let him. And later on, he brought it up because I was a safe person now. I wasn't a person that was going to shame him. So he came to me and said, I was able to explain that Uncle Johnny's sick. He has a disease called addiction, blah, 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 blah. And he said, am I going to get sick like that? And I said, no, it's not like a cold where you can catch it in the air. It's something else, you know. It's because he has taken a drug, which is different than medicine. Medicine's what your doctor gives you. A drug is something that you take from somebody who's not a doctor or a parent. And usually it's illegal. You're not supposed to be taking it either because of your age or because it's an illegal drug. So we had to go through all that too, because I wanted him to have a good understanding. And then I sent them both to care camp so that they could learn about what addiction in your family means, because I also had a grandfather, maternal grandfather, who was an alcoholic, and he was violent to, alcoholic. So, you know, I wanted them to understand what all of that means. Is that what you're talking about, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to repeat that a lot of times. That often came up with both of them. I've never said that to you, Joe, but it wasn't like a one-time thing, one and done. It was, is that going to happen to me? No, I don't. I'm going to try everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen, but you got to also. Okay, so how do I explain to them? So that first one is the thing that I did, drugs, not medicine, but drugs affect a person's behavior and their judgment. So they may do things that they wouldn't do, because that was the other thing that confused them. Why can't we go someplace with just him? Well, he's in recovery, but addiction can affect your judgment too. And so it's best if he just comes over here, and then all four of us can drive over to 7-Eleven and get you guys a freezy or frosty, whatever they call those. But when he did go to jail, it was because his addiction affected his judgment, and that's why he did what he did. And so a lot of those ladies at Clearview, that's the building that they live in at Sacred Heart, they grabbed onto that. That explanation helped them. And then no matter what I did, you did not cause this to happen. It was because of this, or it was because I experimented, or it was because it's in my family, or whatever. I had trauma when I was a kid, but you did not make me into a person who's addicted. And it's not your responsibility to take care of this. It's mine responsibility. And so that's what I would tell a school age child. This is the grown-up's responsibility to take care of, not you. You take care of yourself, and then together, you can do better. And then get them involved again in their regular activities. Don't let them overthink and dwell and, go crazy in their head about it. They have to find other things that they can do to get their mind off of it and to soothe any kind of feelings that brings up. But mostly, those feelings are soothed when they can talk to their safe person, which hopefully is one of their parents. But sometimes it's too much even for the parents to take on, especially if it's their spouse or their partner. So kids will need a trusted adult. That's one of the biggest things that you can do for your child. I tell these ladies, because a lot of them, their partner, their child's father also has a drug addiction, or is angry at them and won't let them, even bring it up, the children. So I say, help them figure out who's a trusted person they can talk to. And then tell that trusted person, hey, I gave my kid your phone number so that they could call you if they ever need to talk. Because I'm here and their dad won't talk about it. So can they talk to you? But I tell them, have them find somebody that you know and trust, who won't divulge their confidence, who won't tell them what to do, or should all over them. You should do this, you should do that. Somebody who'll just listen and who will give advice if asked. Not trying to push any kind of help on them. And so we talk about intervention too, which can take any form: counseling, talking to somebody, support groups, faith-based support groups, a pastor, treatment center. There's lots of places where you can get intervention. For me, it was education. Just understanding what addiction was very helpful for me. And those members of my family who do not have an education about how addiction changes your brain, they're still holding on to their anger. Even though my brother's been gone for 21 years, they still have that anger at him. So addiction is a great way to deal with feelings about enabling an addiction. So,
Teresa,
yeah, what?
I just want to add that I tried to put those two handouts, the Family Sculpt handout, which has a grid of all the roles that Teresa just talked about, the hero, the scapegoat, the lost child, but I couldn't put them in there. So Tony is going to email you the Family Sculpt chart. And then the last few PowerPoint slides that Teresa has, the how to talk to your children with the age groups, that handout also I
good.
tried to put in there. So Tony will email those two handouts out.
Yeah, those are good handouts. That's what I give the ladies at Clearview. Okay, so the hero child, without any kind of intervention at all, they can become very rigid, and that turns them into alcoholics. Could, but more frequently workaholics, because they feel responsible for everyone. And, work is something that I can do and I can do well and I can get praise for it. So they can get a lot of stress related illnesses too, from not taking care of themselves. But with intervention, they can be like this guy here. Mr. Obama did not have addiction in his family, but his dad basically abandoned him and moved out of the country when he was really young, I think like 3 years old. And he only saw his dad one other time in his life before his dad passed away. And so basically, that's a huge stressor in his life. And, racism every day is a stress. So he obviously got intervention. And he even talks about now, he talks about getting counseling now. Um, so if it was that easy for him to get counseling now, because, he wants to keep his marriage together, it must be something that he's comfortable with, that he's done before. And he also is an avid reader. So I'm sure that he's read self-help books. So this is a hero child that did get some intervention. And so that's why we tell the kids, these things aren't necessarily bad coping skills. They can be good coping skills. People who are children with intervention can become very good executives, you know, or supreme executives like he was. So, with intervention, things can change for them. Even the scapegoat, without intervention, unplanned pregnancies, early substance use, to deal with that pain in their family or in their life, troublemaker in school, and maybe later in their workplace, because that's the only way they know how to resolve problems. And they might end up in prison. So these poor kiddos need the intervention a lot, but with intervention can also find relief from that. So Mary J. Blige, although she's a successful entrepreneur right now and a huge Grammy winner, has a gorgeous, beautiful voice. She had a really rough start in her life. Her dad had PTSD, so her and her mother were victims of domestic violence, and her poor mom, trying to get her out of that atmosphere, uh, moved her into public housing, where she still every day was witness to domestic violence. And also she was sexually assaulted as a child. And so she did find relief through her church, but then became, after that, had an addiction problem herself. And so I didn't dig really far to find out what her intervention was, but I don't think that she would be where she's at now, as a typically successful altogether person. And, I haven't heard anything about her. And so she must be getting, whether she reads or gets help, she has gotten a lot of help with that. So then there's the lost child without intervention, depressed, promiscuous, could lead to obesity, often dies at an early age. And so with help, though, that child can find ways to make that role into successful characteristics. So I want to say Stephen King, Steven Spielberg, his family stressor was divorce, and also he was bullied as a child. And so he said he talked about having a heavy fantasy life as a child and spent, being sometimes an introvert, which is what a lost child is most of the time. But again, got some intervention and was able to use those characteristics in a positive way. And so the last one, the mascot, without intervention, ulcers, can't handle stress because they've never actually been taught to. They just kind of push it down, hope that nobody knows that there's a problem or doesn't want to be bothered with it. Compulsive clown often marries the hero child to be taken care of, and a lot of times will remain immature. But with intervention, again, they can find a way to be successful with it. So the stressor here in this family was homelessness. And um, Jim Carrey himself has talked about getting counseling, has talked about reading tons of self-help books. And he's also admitted to the fact that, he felt like it was his job as a child to make his father laugh. If I could make my parents laugh at least once a day, I felt like I was, accomplishing my goal. And so inevitably, you know, um, I've used different pictures throughout the years, but a lot of times when they see Jim Carrey or my old picture for the mascot before Mary J. Blige was Eminem. So the teenagers want to say, yeah, well, he did this and he did that. Yeah, people,
Scapegoat, Teresa.
what? Huh?
The scapegoat, not the mascot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the scapegoat. Yes. Yes. So they'll say, Eminem had to go back for treatment, or Jim Carrey had an emotional meltdown. Yeah. So there's relapses, but they didn't relapse to the point where they couldn't fix it. They couldn't go back into therapy or treatment. Which is what Eminem did. So, yeah, you're going to slip because nobody's perfect, and being in those roles a lot of times makes you feel like you have to be perfect, and so that's not the narrative that we want to push. We want people to understand, yeah, you're going to slip, but with intervention, you can get help, you can get better. And so we always end, especially in the high school, where do you get help? And we talk about care. Care is a great place, especially in Macomb County. Most of the school districts have a contract with us. And so kids can just call on their own. They don't need an adult or a teacher to call for them. But even without a school district having a contract, they can still come in, and their confidentiality is protected. They can come in and ask questions about health, about mental health. If they have questions about a friend who's talking about hurting themselves, or if they themselves feel like they're partying too much and they can't stop, I tell them your confidentiality is protected. The only time we'll call your parents and involve them is if you need treatment and you agree to treatment, then we have to, talk to your parents. But they can come in and talk to a clinician about what's bothering them and get some help and referrals. So school counselors, religious leaders, a trusted adult, a teacher, self-help books. The main thing that we're trying to get these kids to understand is it's not your fault. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, but you can take care of yourself. And so that's why we have, one of the ways that we could do this with Camp Care. So obviously this is an old flyer from 3 years ago. But again, this summer, we're having it the last 2 weeks of July. We just don't know where yet. We're still working on a location. Usually we like to choose someplace like Fountain Elementary because that's on an access road. Fountain is close to Gratiot, so it's easy to get a bus and go there if there's problems with transportation. But this is a free camp, and it's for children preschool to high school. There is a parent group available that Joe and I both facilitate, and it goes from 10 until 2 every day. So it's not an overnighter, but we give them breakfast. It starts at 10. We give them breakfast anyway. We give them lunch and even a snack during the day. And then we celebrate their birthdays the last day of camp. We have cake and ice cream and all kinds of fun stuff and giveaways. There's lots of giveaways. But what we talk about there is communication, how to manage emotions. You can see there. But if you need any information about this or any of the programs at Care, you can call. Or if you don't write this down and later you need it, Tony can help you get in touch with Care to get more information and find out where these programs are. So, any questions or comments about anything we talked about? Any thoughts about it?
And I think you mentioned this earlier, Teresa, that It doesn't have to be in that chronological order that you mentioned. The firstborn could be a scapegoat. The secondborn could be the hero. Or like Teresa said, that you have dual roles. You know, they're fluid. You try a role, it doesn't work for you, you slide in the other one. Like me, I was a lost child and I was the mascot. I didn't want to be part of the family, but when I was, I liked making people laugh. So you try these roles out to see if you get your needs met, and it reduces your pain.
Yeah.
But it's funny to see that sculpt, that the hero all the way down to the mascot, fit my family to a T. From my firstborn oldest sister to my youngest me, it fit chronologically to a T with personalities and everything.
Doesn't have to though.
Yeah, it doesn't have to, of course.
Yeah. And if you have one child, you know, they may take on one of those roles or a couple of those roles. You know, everybody's different as well as being the same.
And if this information kind of brought up any of our past traumas or something, if you're feeling a little uncomfortable or emotional, you know, reach out to somebody, give somebody a call, talk to somebody about it, because once we hear this, we might reflect on our own lives and past traumas, and it makes us feel a little weird, guilty, or hurt.
Yeah.
Anybody
All right.
want to share any thoughts, comments, concerns?
Actually, like I was thinking the exact same thing that Joe was saying. That described my family to a T. So it's kind of nice to hear an explanation and be like, wow, kind of like what you were saying with kids, like they feel alone. I always felt alone with that too. And I'm an adult. So thank you. That was really nice to hear it.
And I didn't have addiction in my family. My family stressor was abuse. My father was a short-tempered, hot-headed, angry son of a gun. So we had abuse was our stressor.
I think this presentation was fantastic, and I thank you very much for it. I wish that this could be part of every school curriculum, and it's like Bree said, so every student would know they're not alone.
Yeah. And for the teachers to realize, because when Teresa and I facilitated the camp care and we're running group, you can't hear me?
No.
Real faint. I couldn't hear you.
All right, so when we're running groups, we see the hero of the group. They want to make all the rules, they want to do everything, they want to control the whole thing. And then we see the scapegoat who just wants to ruin the game. He's angry, just wants to ruin the whole class. Then we see the lost child that never wants to participate. When we're doing an interactive game and we're saying, hey, everybody, we're going to play this, she's over sitting in the corner and they're detached. And then we see the mascot who just is annoying and bouncing off the walls and wants to just make everybody laugh. And we're like, just listen for a minute. So we see all of these roles in the classroom. And we have to understand these roles. So a facilitator can go over there and respond to that child in a totally different way that every adult in their life ever responded to them. The scapegoat, we don't go over there angry. We go over there with reflective listening and understanding and having them talk about what's going on. You know, the lost child, we're going to go over there and say, yeah, you seem really uncomfortable, sad, you don't want to participate. And we talk to them.
And it
So look,
doesn't mean it's not difficult. That's why we have 2 facilitators in every room, because, you know, sometimes you could just, after a week, you feel like your head's going to explode and you need somebody to take over, you know, or take that kid out in the hallway and just get him to calm down or her to calm down. But, you know, I wanted to say something before I forget and before you all leave. Just because we hold this camp in Macomb County doesn't mean that anybody from any other county can't come. You know, as long as you can bring your child to camp, we just have to hold it there because of our funder. But anybody from any camp, from any county, Macomb, Oakland, Wayne, anybody can come. They just have to come to us. We can't go there.
and again, Tony's going to send you those handouts. Everything that Teresa talked about is going to be in a grid of a handout, and then the how to talk to your kids about the addiction.
Absolutely. Thank you, Teresa, Joe. Excellent presentation. Again, very insightful, and it provided a lot of reflective, points where you can go, oh, really? That's why that took place. Oh, really? Now I understand that. Great information. I almost feel like it should be like maybe 2 sessions
Yeah. Yeah.
so that we could
Good.
really, get into the different dynamics, and,
Yeah.
and
Do you guys do this presentation geared toward teachers? This would be such a phenomenal pre-service or even post-service type of training for teachers. Like you said, Joe, here's how we approach this child when he's doing this. I love that.
What a great idea. Right, Joe?
Teresa and I will go out.
okay, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next Tuesday, and we will be discussing dealing with relationships and discipline with students and children. And how many times must I tell you? Thanks so much again for joining, and everyone have a great day.